Hello fellow blenderers, today we are going to make a arm rig. So we are going to use this simple model. For to make this a quick process, we are going to use the meta rig of the Rigify add-on. Let's switch on the Rigify add-on. Let's enable it, and I also want to enable the Rigify legacy mod because we actually want to just use the meta rig, and then we are going to make the controls ourselves. Let's add a new human meta rig, and here it is. This is very small. I am just going to scale this up to match roughly the size of my model. And at this point, we don't need anymore the Rigify add-on, so I am going to disable it. And we can just use this as a base for our rig. And let me rotate this by 180 degrees on the Z axis, and I am just going to hit Ctrl A to apply rotation and scale. And now let's go inside our display settings of the bones, which you can find right here. And I want to actually use the stick display state, and I also want to display the bones in front of the mesh. The older trick was called X-ray. Now you can enable it by checking this checkbox right here. And we can now hit the tab button, and we can start to match the skeleton to our mesh. Let's make sure that we are working with a symmetry. If you go in the settings right here, you can enable the X-axis mirror, and then of course we are going to end up with a mirror type of transformation. And now we can start to match our skeleton. I am just selecting things and moving them around. I am also making this tutorial because when someone tries to make a indie game, sometimes the first thing that you end up to do is using the Rigify skeleton as it is, but you have to know that the Rigify skeleton is a very complex skeleton, and it is mainly made for to do complex animation inside Blender. You actually don't want to have a much complex skeleton in your game because you are going to waste a lot of information. Using these custom rigs that we are going to do, you can also have a much quicker mean to animate your model inside Blender. I am also going to make a rig which is compatible with Unity, because sometimes people use the Rigify add-on straight away, and you end up with some bad distortions. For example, the human rig inside Unity does not need these bones right here, so we can just delete them. Now we can continue to position our fingers. Okay, at this point we are pretty much done with the hands. We can move on and focus on the neck and the head. So let's do that. Now we can make the legs, and we can just press C on our keyboard and select the feet and position them also. As you can see right here, from these connection lines, everything is parented the right way. So we are just missing a root bone. So I am just going to hit Shift A to add a bone here on the origin. And now I am going to call this root. So let's go into the bone settings and change the name of this bone to root. And we want to parent our hips to the root bone. So let's select our hips and shift click on the root, and then we can hit Ctrl P to connect our bones. We are going to select keep offset, and now everything should be working pretty fine. Let's check out if our parenting is okay. So I'm going to hit Tab and Control Tab to switch to pause mode, so we can check our parenting stuff. So if we move the root, all the skeleton should be moving, and that's okay. If we select the hips, all the body except the root should be moving, and that's okay. Same thing for the arms and fingers. That's okay. That's okay. And that's okay. So the way it works is that you want to keep this bone parenting always consistent, because sometimes inside Blender we used to make a lot of bones connected in different ways to move an arm or a finger, and in this case we are just going to use helper bones to deform the base skeleton, and we are not going to touch anymore this base parenting of the body. This way you are going to be able to use this skeleton inside your Unity project without problems. All the controls are going to have a non-deformation type of setting. In fact, this bottom bone does not need to deform the mesh, so let's select these two base controls, and I'm going to press Alt on my keyboard and deselect the deform setting right here. So we can now save. Before we move on to the next tutorial, I am going to apply this skeleton to our mesh. I am going to select my mesh and then shift select the skeleton, and now we can click Ctrl P and select set parent to the armature with automatic weights. And now if you switch again to the pose mode inside our skeleton, we can now deform the mesh using our skeleton. As you can see, this bone is set to not deforming and nothing is happening. I'm going to make another tutorial for this part, and we are going to rig the arm first. So we see again in the next tutorial. Bye guys!